Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Hyatt. I am going to be talking to you today about vecdb, which is a new package for Emacs for the purpose of querying for embeddings. And like the LLM package, this is not a package for end users. This is a package for package writers who want to use vector databases. So I think the best way to demonstrate what is a vector database and what does it do and why is it useful is to show a little application. And then I will kind of go into the details, right? So a vector database, I've made one already, and this vector database has a bunch of items in it. Every item is a stanza from Shakespeare. I've imported all of Shakespeare into this database, and you can query it. So I could say Shakespeare lookup, and you can give it a query. I am very hungry. And it finds you the stanza in Shakespeare that is most like what you have written. You can say, I am not hungry. And you get something like that. And you could say, let's see, you could even say things that are in a completely different language, like, eu preciso dormir. I need to sleep. And you get something with that. So you can see, like, this is a powerful search, right? Like, it's hard to have these results with a normal kind of search engine, but it's all very straightforward. You are just storing embeddings, and when I query, that's another embedding. Then we just compare the embeddings to each other. These vectors are like compared in this multi-dimensional space, and you just find the closest one. So really, all the magic is in just transforming the string to an embedding, which is not what this library does. That's what another library, that's what something else does. And I will go into all of that. So you have an idea of what this can do. With this library, you can store things and you can search over them by meaning. And that's it's a very powerful proposition. So I want to spend the rest of this talk just going over, like, what does it look like to do this? How do you use this application? We have, if you actually go to this library, which, by the way, is on new ELPA. So this is really part of the Emacs ELPA. The package library archives completely free, completely, the Free Software Foundation owns this. And I'll have a link to the GitHub account, the GitHub project in the description. But this is all explained in the README. But instead of just going over the README, which you could read itself, I just want to point out a few things. First of all, that this is like the LLM library in the way that, like, it provides a consistent interface to a bunch of different things. And those different things are the vector database backends. And it could do Quadrant, QDRANT. It could do Chroma. And it could do Postgres with a PG vector extension. And these three things, I'm sure there's more. These are all open source things. These all provide different ways to do basically a vector search. And the user may have one of these installed and want to use it. And it's really up to the user which one they want to use. As the package author, if you're wanting to use vecdb, you don't care what the user is using. You just provide them with the ability to create a vector DB provider, and then the rest it should work equivalently. So let's see what that looks like. Let's go Shakespeare. I'll show you how I wrote the Shakespeare thing. So first of all, this is a mix of, like, of both the user stuff and library stuff. But the library stuff is kind of this, which is like requiring a specific backend and creating a specific provider and creating actually just these two things. So if you create a specific provider, this is basically saying, like, look, I have Postgres and I have a database and I have a username, and I'm just going to provide all this. That the code itself is not going to it's not going to try to create this. This is stuff that already exists. and we need an LLM provider. This could come this is for our embeddings. The embeddings could come from anywhere. If you use the LLM backend, the Emacs provider, the Emacs package called LLM, that provides a way to get embeddings. But there's other ways to do this as well. The LM package is pretty nice because it provides batch embeddings as well, which is pretty useful for this type of thing. So we're providing, as the user, I'm providing just like, oh, this is how I want to get my embeddings. I'm using OpenAI. But I could use Ollama, right? You could use a variety of different things. And I'm saying this is a collection. This is more of like, okay, this is the application now. Like, we're going to make something called Shakespeare, a collection called Shakespeare. It has a particular vector size. Everything here has to have the same vector size. It's important. And in this case, we don't have any extra data, but we could create payload fields. And those payload fields could be like, oh, I want to store this extra bit of text or another integer or something like that to go along with my data, so that when I retrieve the data, I have like a little bit of extra metadata that might help me. So the vecdb functions are all like this. They're all vecdb-something, and they take a provider and a collection. These are all generic functions, and they're going to specialize on that provider. So this is why, like, you don't need to care what is providing the provider, but based on what the user is giving to this function, different code will be run. So you can make sure a collection exists. You can make sure a collection is deleted. You can create a collection. And here we just go through the Shakespeare.txt file. We just chop everything up into paragraphs. Then for every group of 100, we get batch embeddings from the LLM package. So this is pretty easy. And then we just upsert them. And the only interesting thing to note here is that what we're upserting here are vecdb items. They have an ID, they have a vector. The ID in this case is the point. That way, when we get the ID back, we could just go to the point of the stanza, and then we could highlight the next paragraph, and we're good. So we just upsert all this, each 100 batch in the same operation. And then for the lookup, it's very easy again. We just take the query, we get an embedding from it, and then we search by that embedding vector. And we only want one thing back. And we got the result. The result is a list of items. We take the first one, we get the ID, and we go to that character and highlight the next paragraph. As you can see, super simple stuff. And you can see, based on this, you could do whatever you want. You can index whatever you want. You could retrieve however you want. Here we're retrieving by query, but you could easily just say, highlight a query, highlight some text in whatever, Shakespeare thing, or, I could get the embedding of, a portion of the buffer. Shorter text is better, and you can't have text that is too long, or else it'll break. But you have to sort of give the right amount of text. And if you do that, then you can say oh, what's the most similar stanza to this, right? And there's just it's very flexible in what it allows you to do. If you can have some text, however you want to get it, you could find similar items. And so this is how the vecdb database works. I'm curious to see what people do with it. Emacs, we do a lot of stuff with Emacs. It is interesting to find things by what things actually mean. It's not something Emacs does. No one has done this in Emacs before. So I'm excited to see if people take this and do some interesting things with it. So thank you for your time. And I hope people do wind up doing this. If so, please let me know. And, let me, bugs, ideas, fixes are all welcome in the project, which I'll link to below. Thank you.